Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm for Classic and welcome to Stellar Blade. So I'm not sure if you are as surprised as me, but the demo was released today and I decided to immediately download the demo and take the game for a spin. My first reason for that is that I know that this is a desired game that people want to play, and second thing, the final version will be kind of expensive, and it's also featured de novo, so yeah. And third thing, this demo seems to be in a very good state. Options menu seems to be complete. There is a shader compilation pass at the very beginning of the game, and the game barely stutters at all. So it seems like this will be the performance of the final version. It seems pretty good. This game, it is not using Unreal Engine 5, it is using Unreal Engine 4, but I'm actually surprised that they included a good shader compilation pass, because in Unreal Engine 4, despite we have seen games with pre-compiling shaders at the beginning, sometimes it didn't really cough out all the shaders to be compiled, and sometimes there were more centering. And in this demo of Stellar Blade, what I do see, it's a very refined product in that sense, so good thing. Also, it does feature the DLSS 4 if you have an NVIDIA GPU, and also features FSR 3.1, which I do think it does well its job. So yeah, that's that. So my recommended setting for 1080p, it is essentially playing the game with 1080p maximum settings. Probably you noticed that on the graphical settings I'm going overboard with the VRAM recommendations. I never do that, but for some reason, um, when I was playing this game and when I did start the game, the estimates of the VRAM was very low, and for some reason, when I did reach this sequence at this sequence, I mean, um, it just started to go overboard and above the recommendations. And when I did restart the game after this recording, it never happened again. So it never happened to say that these settings was above the VRAM usage or the VRAM recommendations, I mean. So that's why I still do recommend to go with 1080p maximum settings. But if you do encounter any issue, you just need to drop the environmental textures to high and call it a day. Because when it comes to the performance, playing with 1080p maximum settings will grant you an experience fully above 60 frames per second, even on cutscenes, even when a lot of stuff is going on. And let me tell about a lot of stuff going on with this game. The early beginning of this demo packs a lot of explosions, a lot of action, a lot of alpha effects. I was really ready to use that sequence as a benchmark, but to my surprise, this city environment, which doesn't has as much action as the early beginning of the game, this sequence is more demanding. I'm assuming that it's maybe because of the foliage and a lot of volumetric stuff going on, and a lot of still debris again, a lot of off effects. It still works really well, even on cutscenes with depths of field and stuff like that engaged. It does run really well above than 60 frames per second. Of course, the 1% lows tells other story, but I do believe that's typical Unreal Engine thing. Sometimes I'm just playing and I see the frame time graph going up and down for no apparent reason. That only happens when using variable frame rate. If you lock the game to 60, for example, or use VSync, assuming that your screen is 60 Hz, um, I don't have any issue at all with stuttering. Everything it is just buttery smooth. It's just when frame rate it is unlocked that those frame times go up and down without any explanation at all. It's not the first time I see these with this GPU. I've seen these in other Unreal Engine titles, and I'm almost 100% sure that even my 1650 Super had this kind of issues with Unreal. At first, I even thought that it was a VRAM issue, but now with this GPU AMD with a lot of VRAM, that's clearly not a VRAM issue. Alright, so what can I tell about Stellar Blade? So it's very optimized. Um, it's kind of an hack and slash game with a lot of Souls elements, alright? But it is Korean, just like Lies of P, but instead of having like a Pinocchio. What you do have in this case, it is actually a very attractive woman. So some people say that this game is very sexualized, that it's not representative of the woman, despite, well, the actor behind this game, it's actually very hot, let me tell. Um, it's a very attractive girl. Some people don't enjoy it and find it disgusting. Some other people just love it and get horny with that. I'm mostly distracted by the attributes of the of the main character. Um, Instead of looking to the cutscenes and to the action moments and to the conversations, sometimes I'm just focusing at the jiggly physics that this game features. But okay, it doesn't matter. The game is still pretty good. But still, yeah, that thing is some distracting, and they know exactly what they are doing. Even on some cutscenes, they really focus on the butt and on the, well, the two arguments of weight that this character have. But basically, yeah, they know what they are doing. But still, the game seems pretty good. A lot of actions, a lot of very high level of productions with the explosions and stuff going on, which is very surprising. So I've been talking about the game, but we are currently at 1440p at the moment, and at 1440p my recommended settings, it is for you to go with the high settings with FSR on its quality mode. By doing this, you will be upscaling from 900p to 1080p, which I still do think that it's very respectable. FSR works pretty well at 1440p in my opinion. The high settings, it's pretty great. I don't notice too much of a difference in between high to the maximum settings. It's really when you drop down to medium that I start to notice a difference in shadow quality essentially, and also in other stuff, like for example, during the cutscenes the depth of field is not as refined, but mostly the difference is not very big. But I'm telling you, medium settings but with high textures, for example, that's when I don't really notice too much of a difference. But yeah, that's pretty great. And let's just watch this cutscene over here, since it's the, I do believe, the mostly demanding moment of this test that I have in here. And as you can see, it runs really great in my opinion. So it's a nice setting if you want, if you have a 1440p screen and you want to play above 60. Again, just use high settings with FSR on its quality mode. So I will jump to other settings that I did try out in here. And as usual, I have other settings that I like to test. In this case, I did try out the game at 1440p high settings, just like I was using, but without any upscaling. And on the right, I have the maximum settings with FSR on its native mode and textures on high. And I jump to the cutscene, and as you can see, both of them just does drop below than 60 frames per second. Of course, the maximum settings drops more often. I think if you have a variable refresh rate screen, you can try to go with 1440p high settings, and you don't need to use any upscaling, it will be fine. Although 1440p maximum settings with textures on high, you really need to have a very good variable refresh rate screen if that's to save you from having a bad experience. It might work, but as you can see, there are some moments that it does drop below than 45 frames per second, so it's hard to tell if your variable refresh rate screen will handle it or not. And for that same reason, I do think that 1440p high settings, it's probably the best option if you have a variable refresh rate screen. If you don't, just use 1440p high settings with FSR. As for 4K, my recommendation is for you to go with medium settings, with textures on high and FSR on its performance mode. So FSR on performance mode at 4K, it's essentially upscaling from 1080p to 4K, which is pretty cool. Medium settings does look good. Like I said, it's just the first thing that I did notice immediately is just the shadow quality. It's the typical Unreal Engine 4 shadows. If you look to the character shadow, it looks more blobby. You will notice that on the bridge, for example. But I'm using texture quality on high because we have enough VRAM to do it. But as you can see, look at the shadow of the character. It's very typical Unreal Engine 4. It gets blobby like that. And yeah, that's about it. Performance is great. It is above than 60. Again, the 1% lows tells other story. But I would say to forget that, especially if you play with locked frame rate to 60. Your 1% lows will be okay, as well as your frame timing consistency. Like I said, this is something that it does happen to me in Unreal Engine titles with a variable refresh rate. Other things that you should hide is the temperatures that I'm running my PC. It's actually 3 AM when I'm doing this video, and it's so hot on this room, you have no idea. So the PC is a little bit hot, but the performance drop from that, it's not really a big deal. So this is the experience that you will get. Again, keep in mind that my RX 6700 XT is running on PCI Express 3. So if you have a PCI Express 4, you might be able to extract like 1 or 2 or even 3 extra frames, and it will probably be more consistent when it comes to frame times. But yeah, that's the thing. So let's just open the car to trigger the cutscene and see how 4K median settings with FSR in its performance mode runs during the cutscenes. And as you can see, even recording, it does work pretty well. So it seems to be very good news for 4K users. They can have a great experience with the median settings with FSR on its performance mode, and you can have an experience above than 60. So highly recommended. So it's not all the games that I can say that yeah, you can play with 4K without too much compromises, but in this case I don't think that the compromises are very big, because FSR performance mode it's pretty cool at 4K, and also despite we are playing at medium, textures are very good at high, so no big compromises in here. If you have a 4K screen, you can go ahead and buy this game when it does release, because it plays very well above than 60. So again, the question is, how about the other 4K settings? So just to end the video, on the left we have 4K high settings with FSR on its balanced mode. It's essentially something in between 1080p and 1440p and upscale to 4K. And on the right we have in here maximum settings with textures on high and FSR on its quality mode. So essentially we are upscaling from 1440p to 4K. Performance seems very similar. 4K high settings with FSR on its balance mode might be okay with variable refresh rate, but 4K maximum, I think it's only good if you are going to play with 40 frames per second walk or 30 frames per second walk or something like that. I also tried the game with 4K max textures on high with no upscaling, and it was another than 30. So I think that's all that I want to talk about Stellar Void performance. Hope you did enjoy the video, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.